Okay, so what my program does is it's a basic calculator, and it'll um, basically, if you input two numbers, it will ask you and say what you would like to do: addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division. It will answer the question and say the answer to this equation is blank. So, for instance,
Talk a little bit about those preprocessor directives.
all right, so
Use the mouse to point or to
these are the
preprocessor
okay.
directives.
So preprocessor directives are things imported from local folders, and since I'm new to C++, this is like new to me. I used to work with Python, and when I worked with Python, it was a bit different, but the only similar thing about this was you'd have to import things such as random number generators because the program couldn't do that by itself without importing it. So these import things from local folders that say the program can do certain parts.
Okay, so you're saying that those are local folders that you're including in your project
Yes.
in order to enhance your programs, to be able to allow your program to do things that are a little more complex math-wise, like generate a random number.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I made 4 functions, and each of them has a different task. And
Well, what is a function?
a function is basically a set of commands, and since it's outside of, first there's the main function, and they're kind of like a big circle, and each function's a little circle inside the big circle, which is the C++ program. So each function basically has a set of commands, and when you call that function, it will run those commands with whatever it says inside. So, for instance, my function for addition right here, it says when it asks the question, what is the first number, it will store the answer to that in a variable called num1 down here, and then it will say double answer equals...
Okay, instead of pointing to the monitor, use the mouse, please, if you don't mind.
Okay, and then it says double, and at first I said integer, but then I realized that if I had integer, it wouldn't work with decimal numbers.
Right.
So then I changed that up everywhere that I had integer to double. So now if I say 0.8 plus 0.8, it will say 0.16 instead of, or 1.6 instead of 1, because computers don't work with decimal numbers without it
Yeah.
being told to.
Yeah, so what you're saying is if you declare a data type to be a double, you allow for the numbers after the decimal point. But if you declare it to be an integer, you're truncating everything after the decimal point. So
Okay.
if you add 0.8 and 0.8, if you had declared each of those two variables an integer, you'd get 1 instead of 1.6,
Okay.
which could cause all sorts of problems with precision and all that later on.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially since you're doing a calculator.
Yeah. So basically adding double makes it more precise, and you can do decimal numbers as opposed to just regular integers.
Right.
And so back to functions. Each function has a specific task. So my first one does addition, my second one does subtraction, third one multiplication, fourth division, and then down here is my main function called main, and basically this is where I ask you, would you like to add, subtract, multiply, or divide? When you give the answer, it will store your answer in choice, the variable, and then it will, then I have if statements that say, if choice equals add, then this function will be ran. So if choice equals add, the answer, which is another variable that I made beforehand up there, it will say the answer equals, so it's defining the answer, add, and then num1 and num2, because those are the two questions that are asked beforehand.
Why are you using highlight if choice equals add? Why are you using equals as opposed to equals?
I don't remember this. I know
No,
in
that's
Python.
fine. That's fine.
Yeah, that was a
Okay,
specific
can someone
reason.
from the audience help with that?
I got it.
Kevin.
Okay, so equals is when you're comparing two things, and equals is saying this equals this.
When you're assigning something.
Yes, when you're assigning a number, a value to something.
So basically, if you use equals add with just one equals, no matter what you put, subtract, whatever, it'll always add. because you're assigning the choice to add all the time. With equals equals, you're comparing choice with add. So if it's not add, it'll do something else. Okay? If x equals 7, do something. Well, x is going to always be 7 because you're declaring x to be 7 all the time. But if x equals 7, now it compares whatever's in x with the value 7. If it's 7, it runs that code. If it's not, it'll do something else.
All right.
Okay, so equals equals is used for comparison. Equals is used for assignment.
Okay.
Okay.
So.
All right, so let's run this code.
All right. So compile.
No errors. Good.
Yeah. Okay. So. Would you
All right,
like
so
the-
let's divide.
Okay.
I have problems dividing all the time.
Okay. What is the first number you'd like to calculate?
My salary, so $1 million.
Yeah.
Okay.
What is the
Let's
second
put 0.5. Let's see if it can divide floating point decimals. Okay. Not as.
Oh.
Is that the answer you were expecting?
No.
Well, it's just in scientific notation, right? Let's run it again. Let's do something. Let's see if it can be a little more precise. Let's do divide. Let's do 7.5. And let's do, yeah, enter. Let's do 3.3. Okay. So there is a little bit of precision there.
Yeah.
All right. I'll run it again, and let's see if you do capital D.
That won't
divide.
work.
It won't work.
No.
And we'll do it. Let's see what happens.
It won't know.
Well, let's see what happens.
All right. So let's just say
10,
10 and
2,
5.
5, whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So basically,
Well, what happened there?
when you say variables, they are cap sensitive. So
Okay.
when you say capital divide, it's completely different from lowercase divide.
How do you think you could solve that problem?
Yeah,
Dougie.
I'm not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you going to say
No,
something?
I'm
Okay,
not.
Doug. How could you solve it?
You could also put in the if function.
In the conditional statement.
Yeah, in the conditional, you could put in if choice equals divide with lowercase or divide with an uppercase D.
Yeah, you could do something like that.
Oh, you
okay?
can say or inside the function.
Absolutely. You could do something like this. If
I'll show you that.
choice equals lowercase, right?
Uh-huh.
Or, okay, choice equals capital D, okay? Blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and you can do as many of these compound conditional statements as you want in one line.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so,
So I could say if choice equals D,
correct.
and then
Close it. Okay, good, Doug.
So-
Okay,
should I look at the question?
yeah, let's look at the questions now.
Okay, how is C++ different from other programming languages you've learned? I've only really worked with Alice and Python, and Alice is not, it just teaches you like basics and like what happens when you put two things together. And then Python, which was a little bit like C++, but it is more user-friendly, as C++ is more practical and a little bit harder to work with. But because I started with Python, I could understand what would happen when something happened. So for instance, a variable in Python, you define that by saying something equals something else.
So you don't have to even declare a data type.
No. So you can just say blank equals blank, and that will like define it as a variable. But in C++, you have to say, is it a double, string, integer, and there's two more data types. Boolean,
Character.
and char, I think. So,
All right, let's take a look at the other question.
yeah. What does your program do, and how does it do it?
That's pretty much been answered, right?
Yeah. So,
Okay.
what is the biggest difference between what you have done in C++ and what you did in Python? Like I said, the way you code is different. So for another difference is if you want to display something on the screen, you in Python you'd say print and then whatever you want to print, and that would show it on the screen when you run the program. But in C++, you add two arrows going to the left, like here, and that'll display it on the screen.
Right.
So that's a little bit
So the syntax is different, obviously.
exactly.
Right.
So yeah, but and also brackets, curly brackets. We didn't have to use those in Python.
Okay.
We did have to use parameters and semicolons after every line, though.
Indentation also is very important in Python. If you don't indent properly, code that's normally inside of a function will actually run after the function terminates,
Yeah.
as opposed to running while the function is in memory. So.
Yeah.
Okay, Nicholas, very good presentation. Does anyone have any final questions or comments? Maureen? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Smith.
Maureen first.
Maureen? Oh, no, she was just pointing to you.
Oh.
Mr. Smith?
It really has nothing to do with coding, because I don't know how to code, but I do a lot of proofreading, and I'm looking at it in terms of from the user side. If you could close the top window. Okay. When you say, what is the first number you would like to calculate?
Mm-hmm.
You're not really calculating that number,
All right.
right?
Yeah.
So what I would say, just in terms of the text, would be, what is the numerator? And then,
Okay.
for the second one, what is the denominator? And then it's just English,
Right.
more than anything else.
All right.
Just a suggestion.
Yeah, because the implication is that there's more than one calculation that you may be doing, and in actuality, you're doing a bunch of different functions, but only one calculation at a time. So that could be a little ambiguous, Nicholas. Very good
Okay.
point, Mr. Smith.
So
I would just replace the first number you would like to calculate with numerator. What is the numerator? And then the second one, yeah, what is, that would be denominator.
yeah. What is the
Denominator.
denominator?
And then the up there, what is the numerator?
What is the
Of course, that presupposes a bit of knowledge on your audience, that they know what a numerator and denominator
Right.
is. That's
Yeah.
okay.
That's a good point. Just one last thing, Nicholas. Make sure, like Mr. Smith said, you don't know what kind of audience you have. So if someone were to look at your code, how could you help them understand the code better? Well, you see how it says there, ask what you would like to do?
Yeah.
I would be a little more detailed with your comments.
Okay.
Remember, what you see there in green are comments.
Yeah.
Those are lines in your code that are ignored by the compiler, but are still helpful to people that are going to be coming after you that might be working with your code. So you may want to be a little more detailed when it comes to comments, okay?
Okay.
All right, guys, this is an outstanding, your very first screencast, your very first program in C++. So, folks, a round of applause for Nicholas.